probably my proudest achievement was my father was down here recently from, lives in Los Angeles. My dad's 83, hadn't been here for a while. And thus, I'd been to America, to see him, but he hadn't been here. And he had heard, your son is doing amazing things in the Cape.
Welcome to another edition of In the Box Seat podcast with myself, Warren Inferno, my good friend Andrew Harrison, and we've got a very special guest in studio today. But before we introduce him, I just want to read out two very pertinent phrases or sayings that I came across on social media, because we all know in KwaZulu-Natal change is taking place, change has started to take place, and there's more exciting things to come, and people, general public, most human beings are a bit nervous of change. But let me read this to you. Stop being afraid of what could go wrong and start getting excited about what could go right. The other phrase is progress is impossible without change. And those who cannot change their mindset and their minds cannot change anything. So keep those two in mind as we go forward into the next hour. And enjoy the next hour with a gentleman who won us an Equus Award a couple of years ago. He's our guest today. His name's Greg Bortz. Greg, how are you?
Great, Warren. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, lovely. Andrew,
I'm stuck in the mud. Yes,
you don't like change. You're an old man.
I love change as long as it's for the good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. Before we go any further, Greg, the acquisition, the status of the acquisition of Gold Circle, where are we at?
We are waiting for one final approval, obviously a very important approval, and that is the approval from the KZN Gambling Board. We don't know when that would be, so we cannot estimate. We are reasonably confident it will be this year. I just can't point to when that may be. And that really, the transaction, for the conclusion of a transaction cannot take place until the final approval of the KZN Gambling Board has been received. I have no doubt they will get to it in due course. I have no doubt that they'll make the appropriate decision. In fact, there is no choice, really, if the transaction isn't ultimately approved, which we expect it to be, by the way. I don't want to indicate otherwise. Then, racing wouldn't continue and the many thousands of jobs will be lost. So I don't think that's lost on anybody. I'm sure that they will get to the right place. But as we've all seen with what's going on in the gaming world, it's quite an active sector. Active segment. It's been actually quite well written about, and I think the KZN Gambling Board's plate, along with some of the other gambling boards' plates, are very full at the moment, but we're looking forward to getting it over the line. It will be this year, just don't know the month.
Your other interests are, besides racing and horses and any hobbies or sports, or what else? Do you get time to do anything else?
Yeah, time is a bit precious. I mean, well documented, or I've spoken about it. I think I spoke about it on our podcast a few years ago when I joined you guys a few years ago. Sadly, as I said, I'm a masochist of note, so my other hobby is being tortured by Spurs. Who got beat last night to Arsenal. Just too shocking. That remains a passion of mine, but honestly, I love horses. I love horse racing, and since being sort of in the role that I've taken on, that's only increased. Get frustrated because I don't get to enjoy it enough. You guys were telling me about how my horses ran yesterday in the Cape. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him. Gina had messaged me and told me about him, but I didn't get to see him. So that remains a passion. Time is quite limited, so there's not really much else that I do. When I'm not at work or what have you, it's always following racing or reading. There's not much more than that.
You are, for those that might not know, it might seem a silly question, you live in Cape Town, is that right?
I live in Cape Town, yeah.
Okay, so Cape Town is where home is. Yep. It'd be remiss if we didn't touch on Oriental Charm, the Hollywoodbets Durban July. I mean, I remember being on track, and literally, embracing you, and you were shivering from joy, and it's just share that moment. How did Oriental Charm come about?
It's look, that is still a high. I'm not sure it'll ever come off of that high, and I hope we never do. Gina and I talk about it all the time. How it came about, it was at a I think it was the national yearling sales of whichever year it was, I forget. And I think we were on a bit of a Vercingetorix shopping spree at the time, and grateful that that was one on the list, and Brett identified the horse, and Brett Crawford came up and said, what about this horse? And obviously liked the sire, so go for it. And it was as simple as that. Always try and have trainers choose the horses, because otherwise when they don't, they blame you for having chosen them a bad horse. So nowhere to hide. And that's how it came about, and never thought, certainly at the time, when I think he won first time out, which was a surprise, and then which was a brilliant surprise, and then he went off. It seemed to us to go off the boil, but it didn't seem to Brett that he was off the boil. It just seemed to Brett that he was maturing and growing, and I never expected him to turn into what he's turned into today. So
what are your thoughts? Because he 2 starts ago he won. His run in the Lomron King's Plate was. What did you make of that? Because chatting to the general people around, some are worried, some are saying, prep run for the World Sports Betting Met. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, we're certainly disappointed with the run. We know that a mile is not his trip, notwithstanding that he won the Green Point before that over the mile, but that's not his optimum trip.
Yeah.
We think 10 furlongs plus is his trip. So we think, and the World Sports Betting Met was always the objective for him, so nothing changed there. As to why he ran poorly, he certainly came out of the race not great. He was in pain, and there were a few issues and niggles. Brett and James are masters, and they've been working on him, and the word that we've heard is that he's recovering nicely, and they think he'll be back to normal. Only time will tell. Yes. I mean, he had if he picked up a niggle in what was very firm going, as you guys know, this time of year, we don't get much rain in the Cape, and so the going is reasonably firm, which is not great for a horse that maybe have a niggle or two. But all I can tell you is the feedback that I've gotten from Brett and James is that the pain seems to have dissipated, and he's going to come on spot.
Better get Dean to pump the course with a bit of water before the race.
Listen, Dean, by the way, is the track master.
He's a master.
He's just an absolute master, and whatever, it'll be in the best shape possible. Dean Diedrichs is one of the unheralded
the behind the scenes
kings of this industry. Doesn't get enough credit.
We do jump around a bit in the podcast, but that's all right. It's a relaxed conversation. Your plans, hopes, and dreams for 2025, personally, maybe personally, but obviously for the business. I mean, what are you looking forward to? Please God, it's a big year.
Yeah. So, personally, I'm just super happy. Just where I am in my life. My kids are doing great and in good health, and a great relationship with my family. Gina and I are super happy, and just, you never want to jinx it. Life is great, so I would hope that those blessings continue as they are. Yes. I'm not looking for any changes other than to maintain the status quo, but we know life isn't like that. It never goes in a straight line. There's always curveballs that come your way, but from a personal perspective, I don't think I've ever been happy in my life. That's the truth. On a business perspective, we just touched on the KZN Gambling Board. At some point, we will receive the approval to proceed with the transaction, and then I think we'll have to roll up our sleeves and get very busy. But for those in KZN have started to notice some changes already, and I'm sure you're going to touch on them probably, Warren, in some of the initiatives that have been started in KZN. So we're going to be super busy here. We're going to be super busy in the Cape. We never rest on our laurels. We've raised the bar on ourselves, and we're our harshest critics, so we're going to continue to improve. So professionally, the aim is just to continue with more of the same and just improve the output, the racing output, the product that people get to love and watch and bet on. Just want to keep that getting better. If our focus is on the racing, the rest will take care of itself.
Well, I noticed, I think I mentioned before we started that podcast, at Scottsville, you've brought in these new incentives.
Yeah.
And the Scottsville meeting on Sunday is just, wow. There's full fields we didn't even know we had that many horses in Summerveld.
It is jam-packed,
Yeah,
you're quite right. But
where were they been hiding before? I mean, that's what I want to know.
We have no doubt that the incentives are going to work. We followed this playbook in the Western Cape, and the results have spoken to themselves in terms of field sizes. The numbers are actually quite extraordinary, where you see what the average field size was to where it is now. And we implemented what we called Race Cape in the Cape, incentives fees, saddling fees, changes to the program, all these sort of things. They work great. We figured out what wasn't working. We've been able to tweak it, and now we've gotten to a point where we have a formula that we think works, and we are now rolling that out in KZN. Horses don't get manufactured out of thin air. Horse population in KZN has been dramatically on the decline. Some of them, of course, did go to the Cape. Others have just been reduced ownership in KZN as interest in the local product has waned a little bit. I think that our aim is to stimulate that demand.
Right.
When you stimulate that demand, the supply will catch up. People don't want to put mares in foal if people aren't buying them. But as we've seen since these initiatives started a few years ago, all of a sudden the average sales price has gone up. The breeding industry has gotten a boost. More mares are being put in foal. More foaling numbers will take up. But unfortunately, as you know, the gestation period of a horse is not 1 second, not 1 minute. There's a while, and there's a natural lag.
3 years before you get there. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think KZN will catch up. So those incentives, ultimately, Warren, the answer to the question is, the initiatives and the incentives that we started, we believe will stimulate demand. More people will be interested in racing in KZN, both local KZN owners as well as owners from around the country that want to send horses to KZN to support the wonderful industry here.
Sure.
And we think that will catch up. I think now is a particularly difficult time in KZN when you think about it, right? Not season yet,
Yes.
right? It's still the Cape season.
Yes.
This is the time when you always at a lull, and actually, all things being equal, this is the lowest horse population has been in a long time, so that is why you've seen small fields. These improvements, I think when we're having this conversation in a year, you'll see a dramatic difference.
Yes.
I'm not going to get too carried away by an upcoming meeting. I think we're still going to have a lull until we kick in, and then we expect that to start.
Yeah, well, the talk at Scottsville on Sunday is I hope I don't run last.
What you're referring to, for those of the viewers that are not aware about, if I don't run last, in the incentives, you get incentives, and the only 2 horses in the field that don't get the incentives are the horse that wins,
Yes.
because it's obviously got
get the
the
stake,
new
yeah.
increased stake, and the horse that runs last. And there's a reason for that. There was a logic behind having that, because we learnt,
Yes.
you don't want somebody just to enter the stable cat, just so that the horse can be entered, run last, and get an appearance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So there's a little bit of competition at the back end too.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, and
And
that's
also, too, why do you want to promote mediocrity? I mean, who wants to run last?
yeah.
You know?
So that was that is the logic behind it, and it seems to work. And by the way, and then what it also does is, you want people to ride to the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And
also
then-
I see on Sunday we got Fani Bronkhorses coming down from
Gauteng. Yeah.
You're going to start
Correct.
attracting
Yes.
those horses as
Other
well.
provinces.
Yeah, listen, I would, as our racing becomes more attractive here in KZN, as the prizes and the incentives improve, there's just some outstanding trainers and horses up in Gauteng, and I fully expect, and it's obviously a lot easier to, for example, raid from Gauteng, as we know, than it is to raid from the Cape. You can't just raid from the Cape, you've got to be based here. I think we're going to see continued uptick in the Gauteng trainers just popping in, and that is to be welcomed and encouraged.
Yeah. But it's also a big bonus now with these incentives that you're going to. I'm not thinking of the Platinum racing, Andre Nell and Byron Forster. I mean, their stable here is very successful. I know Justin Snaith tried, and he's but maybe now he would send his lower lights here. And we got Mike de Kock who's moved to Summerveld, which is a huge boost for racing in this province.
So, Warren, obviously I don't know where we're going to head to in this podcast, but I'm sure you're going to ask questions about how the business is going to operate. But obviously, we think with one hat. We are now starting to think with one hat, even though the transaction hasn't gone through. We're already applying our minds, looking forward. Cape, KZN, one company, maybe not one company as in physically merged, but we're thinking from a racing perspective as one company. It will always be two operators, but it's in our mind, we plan holistically.
Together.
We plan together is how we think of it, even though we'll remain two distinct operators because we're two distinct centers. And when we think of that, if trainers from the Cape say, well, you know what, I'm going to take a permanent string of 10, 20, 30 horses and base them in KZN, we welcome it. Because it's not like the horses have left the system of the company.
Sure.
They've moved from
branches.
They've moved branches.
Branches.
So our aim is to absolutely help facilitate. If Cape trainers wish to set up here, we intend to help them as much as possible. So I think the population is going to be boosted in KZN 3 ways. Number one, we're going to stimulate demand, and local KZN owners and buyers are going to will buy more horses, which will race in KZN. 1, 2, I think we're going to see strong raider input on a regular basis, and that is absolutely welcomed. And 3, I think you will see some of the larger Cape yards open up a second yard here in KZN, as you mentioned, as Mike de Kock has just done.
Yes.
Mike and Matt de Kock have just done.
That is hugely exciting and really so good to look forward to, because you talk about the incentives. You're saying that one trainer said to you they didn't get the incentive, they ran last. Another trainer said to me at the very same meeting, I said, well done on your winner. He said, but I didn't get my incentive. I said, but you got a lot more else. You got bigger stakes, you got saddle fee, you got a whole lot of things.
With the juvenile race at Scottsville on Sunday, this last Sunday.
Juvenile plate,
yeah,
what is it called?
Juvenile
Futurity, I think.
It was 300,000 stake.
So
unfortunately, Mike Miller got everything, but anyway.
But there is, part of it was one of, and we sat down when we started a few years ago in the Cape, and we really want to focus on the juveniles. We actually had a situation, and we were reacting more to the situation in the Cape, because what we found in the Cape is that people were buying horses, felt they had some wonderful horses, felt that these were Guineas or Derby horses, and were sitting on their horses and would wrap them in cotton wool and only introduce them later on. And we're like, hang on a second, we've got an issue with our field sizes are too small. We need to have more horses running sooner. So we focused on juveniles to get horses in racing into the system sooner. Yeah. And that was, literally, Andrew, that was like the snowball sort of gathering momentum, and that was a big boost. So we've taken the same playbook here. Come on, guys. Don't wait for the horse to turn 3 because you think it's going to be, let's start racing a little sooner, because we're reacting to our circumstance. We have small field sizes, and we're doing what we can to get them up. And that's the reason why you
But it's also, in the old days, I'm showing my age now, but you should have the African Breeders' Stakes I think it was on New Year's Day. It was a 2-year-old race full of horses. It was one of the main 2-year-old races, but everybody wanted to win the African Breeders. Now you're getting 6, 7 runners in a 2-year-old race. Yeah. But now you got colts and fillies up against each other, which is good idea.
Oh, the other day, as you wrote in that article in the newspaper, that mixed race, the clean sweep by the fillies versus the colts, So it's good that they're mixing the races.
Yeah, but also, an owner who buys a horse and he thinks, well, I have to sit here and wait for 2 years before it runs. It's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's all part about improving the racing experience.
Owen Heifer, Hollywood, Greg Bortz. We're going to talk about that just now, but just a general question. You are, along with your partners and Owen and Hollywood, are running a massive operation. How do you do it?
You're referring to racing?
Yes, this massive beast that you've taken on and so successfully started off in the Cape, which is now coming to. It's just massive. How do you do it? You keep sane, you keep strong, you drive forward.
Well, the first thing is, on a personal level, so fortunate to have partnered with Hollywoodbets. Hollywoodbets is the preeminent gaming business in South Africa. And the thing is, I've always tried to, chatting to Owen and Suren and Basil and Chanel and the whole team, trying to figure out what their secret formula was, like how they're so good.
Yeah.
And they just keep it simple. It's just like common sense. They just do the right things, and they're just consistent in doing them, and they just anyway, I've had the benefit of having them as my partners. So the first answer to your question is, we have the Hollywoodbets and all that entails, that involves supporting
Support
the
structure,
initiative.
yeah.
And that's massive. It's just, and I'm not just talking money, which is great, but it's the expertise, it's the people, it's the infrastructure, it's all of the above. So, I mean, to be honest, I wind up sitting on podcasts and I wind up getting a lot of interviews. The people that don't get interviewed is everybody there at the Hollywoodbets team is just different division, absolutely world
Well,
class.
we can get Devon on, but we can't get Owen on.
We've had we got
Owen.
Devon's on the list, as is Anthony Delpeche, but Owen refuses.
No, Owen is the Wizard of Oz, sits behind the curtain, never to be seen.
Yeah.
But trust me, he's there and very engaged and very involved. And listen, if it wasn't for Owen's absolute sickness for horse racing, and I don't think I've met anybody sicker than Owen when it comes to it, we wouldn't have the good fortune of talking about how racing is heading in the right direction. I mean, and but it's a mark of the man that he'll probably be if he watches this podcast, he'll be forwarding this part, because he absolutely he doesn't want to be spoken about or his name known, but he is he's the guy that deserves more than anybody else deserves the credit.
But Hollywood it's a hell of an operation. I mean, I drive through going to the game parks.
Yeah.
Carolina, it's a real bloody hole, but there's
Hollywood's
Hollywoodbets. Just come
advertising,
through Uppington, Hollywoodbets. There's the purple vehicle parked outside the thing. I mean,
But it's just, I mean,
built a remarkable business.
You know, we're talking about their business, but as Greg says, Swift. You know, I'll never forget when the branding for Hollywoodbets Greyville. I left the racecourse. I'm just using. I call it a Wednesday. And I said to my colleague, I said, we're walking off the racecourse. There's not one purple banner here, and the launch is tomorrow morning. I said, impossible. We arrived. They worked right through the night. Every single branding that you see here was done through the night. That's why, because they make it happen.
Yeah, and that's the work ethic. That's the culture. So when you talk about the amount of work, there is a lot of work, but nobody's daunted by it. You just deal with it on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. We'll get through everything, and we will succeed, because we don't allow failure to be an option.
But Hollywood's investment in racing is not just supporting race courses and supporting the industry. I mean, they support that on their buying of horses. I mean, that is just unbelievable.
Yes.
I spoke to Trevor Brown, who runs the operation now at Ashburton. They've got 67 two-year-olds there.
And that is just, it's remarkable. First of all, obviously, they, as I said to begin with, their love of horse racing is the only thing that drives it. But as we spoke about, and we looked at this problem of what was facing the industry, and we had these declining horse population because breeders weren't breeding, because racing was messed up and no one wanted to buy, and you had this downward spiral. So we've heard the story a number of times. We try to reverse that, make racing and stimulate the demand. But Hollywood Racing has done a massive job in terms of being a big buyer. That has contributed significantly to breeders saying, oh wow, we've got an upliftment here. The demand is there. Mm-hmm. So their role in all aspects is just terrific.
Yeah, and they're not buying cheapies either.
No, they certainly aren't. They're buying good quality horses. The Cape Town culture and the KZN culture, two completely different cultures with regards to marketing, social media, etc. And obviously following Cape Racing, social media and KZN's. I mean, both platforms are outstanding, but two different cultures. How do you approach that situation?
Yeah, we certainly don't believe that one size fits all. You have to understand your customer base, your target market. As it relates to KZN, what we do know is that there are very few companies that have the KZN DNA of Hollywoodbets. They started around the corner from here as winning form and have evolved into what they are today. They are Durban based. They understand this customer base better than anybody else. Be very much guided and driven. You've mentioned Devon and the whole marketing team and the whole Hollywoodbets team that really understand it. We are not looking to go and replicate Cape Town in Durban. What we are looking to do from a racing perspective is find those incentives, initiatives, and what have you that have worked from a racing perspective. In terms of customer experience, what it is the customer that comes on course, for example, would want, and what have you, that is very different. The demographic is different. The interests and are all different, and we have to tailor accordingly. And for that, we'll be heavily guided by the wisdom, knowledge of the on the ground Hollywoodbets team. You are not going to see Hollywoodbets Greyville looking like Hollywoodbets Kenilworth,
Okay.
or it's going to be suited to this market,
Okay.
and that is suited to that one.
Okay, sure, fantastic. The company, Greg, well, first of all, will there be Cape Racing, Gold Circle now no more? Is there a finalisation in the name of the new company, or is that in work progress?
So as I said, the companies will remain legally distinct entities. There will be two racing operators. However, in terms of the way we approach racing and running the business, we will run it as one.
Sure.
To run it as one, you want to have one brand, right? Obviously, you're not going to have a brand of Cape Racing in KZN,
yeah.
right? So we need to come up with that brand. We also do not intend to continue with the brand Gold Circle. So that will absolutely change.
See, my badge is gone then.
We're getting new badges.
We're getting new badges.
Don't
worry
worry,
about
there's
the badges.
beautiful badges.
Yeah. So we will be coming up with one uniform branding across the company. We've used the term coast or coastal. For now, we're toying with, is it going to be coast racing, coastal racing, race coast, race coastal? We're still working on that. We're having fun with that, but we will be rolling out as one brand. When you are a member of, if you are an owner and you just like you speak about your Gold Circle badge, that Gold Circle badge will be replaced with your Race Coast or Coastal Racing
So you
badge.
go to Cape Town,
And if
yeah.
you come to Cape Town, or Cape Townians or members from the Cape come here, it's one. It's complete reciprocity. It's but one club.
Yeah.
The benefits and the perks, etc., will be identical. So that's where we're going. We are. Not only are we not finalized, we haven't even gotten to that. There's so much other work to do before we worry about rolling out the brand. But the answer to the question is, it will be operating as under one umbrella. As to what the final name is, TBD.
The incentives, we've touched on incentives already, and spoken about those different types of incentives, saddling fees, don't run, appearance money, etc. Increase in stakes. But syndication, ownership syndication, and I think that most in the industry, try and do their best to promote ownership. But syndication, that's the way that Cape Racing have done. It just seems to be a huge success.
Yeah, that has been one of the other major catalysts of growth. And it wasn't that we woke up one day and came up with a great idea. We got to see it happening in Australia. And we've all read different stats. 1 in every 10 people in Australia has a share of a racehorse. Mind-blowing, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, that's a mind-blowing stat. And the reason for that is syndication. So well, how are we going to make syndication easy? And so I think you've seen, when you look in the Cape, you see a proliferation of syndicates owning winners, right? So, we also obviously have our own sales company, Cape Racing Sales. We were able to give special terms for those that buy as a syndicate from credit and whatever the case may be. And we've made it easy and financially viable for syndicates to form. So somebody doesn't have to have raised money before coming to the sale.
Yeah.
They see a horse, they buy a horse, they're given the time to go put together their syndicate. And the best part about a syndicate, and you've all heard this before, if you've got 20 members of a horse we see 20 people or 16 people or 15 people showing up on
the
course,
race course,
right?
yeah.
And that is brilliant. So if your question, Warren, is would that same courtesy extend to KZN? Yes, of course, but it actually does today. As long as you're buying horses on our sales,
Yes.
and you're doing a syndicate, and of course, as I said, we are going to be coastal racing, which means if the horses are going to be running here, in KZN or in Cape, the same benefits will extend, and we hope to see syndication becoming more of a thing here in KZN.
Yeah, I'd like to work that out, do some research into those Australian syndicates. Some of them have got sort of like 100, 120
They do.
members. Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And they do. And by the way, now, so what they do, it's its own nuance. Can you imagine? So what happens the way it works in Australia, they have professional syndicate managers.
Yeah.
The really outstanding people that manage it. And what happens, you join the syndicate, the contract gets given to you, these are the terms. The syndicate manager will make the decision on, let's call it, on veterinary matters. Is the horse going to be gelded? You don't go out to 100 people getting their opinion.
Yeah.
There's somebody that manages it. Then you also, when you come to bigger race days, you can't have 100 people. They won't let 100 people go into the parade ring. So what they'll do is they'll run, let's say, a rotation. You know,
Okay, it's your
these
turn.
your
Yeah.
turn and what have you. So it's managed very professionally. We're not there yet. Can you imagine in South Africa we have 100 people in, we got 100 people coming on the parade ring, which I said, no, it's not your turn. Can you imagine how well that will go down? So we got to cut our cloth according to where we are. So, you know, we're still improving on syndications, but yeah, in Australia it's done as a proper business.
There was a winner yesterday, Noonday Gun. I think you're a horse that you may have owned.
I did, yeah.
Noonday Gun, that won for the Social Squad Syndicate, Social Squad Syndicate. And I listened to the one gentleman in his interview, and I actually just watched, and I was just quite moved actually, because he was just so enjoying his moment, you know, and he explained his story, and that's what it's about.
I was shaking my head for a second there, because so when we came up with the idea of syndication, and so back up, the syndication is separate. What we came up, our challenge that we had in the Cape, not that you asked me about this, but the challenge that we had in the Cape is that very high standard of racing, and everybody has been sort of more tuned to racing in Group 1s and Group 2s. And as a result of that, if people had horses that they didn't think would be a Group 1 or Group 2 contender, the horse would leave the province to go somewhere where it was perceived to be weaker, where the horse could be competitive. So we needed to build up our lower divisions. You know, so we've got a class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, build up our class 5s. But you've got to get it going, right? You can't you can't put on a class 5 race if you don't have any horses nominated for the race.
Sure.
So I took one for the team and took some of our Gina and my weaker horses, and we sold them. These are horses that would otherwise, you know, and we got them into the class system, and a lot of them got bought by syndicates. These are horses that hadn't won many races before, but as soon as we sold them, they started winning. So when you tell me Noonday Gun, I just know, like, there's a comment waiting for me from Gina as, see that horse you sold?
Yeah. No, but I was just read an article the other day, which I put in the paper. The horse in England, it was bred in the purple. I went to France, couldn't win. They sold it for 30,000 guineas to some, I mean, Tommy Carroll in England. It won one race after about 20 starts. And then the owner sold it to a mate of his in the pub for nothing. It won 8 races in a row. Well, not in a row, but 8 races lost. It's the most winning horse in England this last year.
And that was our.
It's still winning at the bottom division, though.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He started off with a merit rating of 45.
But that's the best part about it. When you're on course and your horse wins, I can promise you, while everybody aspires to win Group 1s, to have a winner, we all know, is such a special feeling.
Yeah.
And whether it's a Group 5, you just want to be able to race and win. And so that was having that stronger lower division was important to us, and that's helped our horse population because we don't have the bleed.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of our horses would move to Quebec or what have you, or go on online sale and be sold. You're seeing far less of that now because there are plenty of opportunities for them in the Cape. Yeah.
I'm not being facetious in asking you this question.
Okay.
I remember, because I know you haven't got a share in a horse now, but I mean, with syndications, maybe that'll change. But in the past, you have had a winner as an owner, from an owner's hat.
I've had a few.
Okay, well, that's great. No, that's good, because as you say, there is just no feeling like it.
There's no feeling like it.
There is really no feeling
And the
like it.
syndication, we all know this as well, it's very cliched. But you tell the gentleman, whoever you were referring to, that led in Noonday Gun, that, sorry sir, you're not allowed to have 100% of the enjoyment. You have a 1% share, you're only allowed to have 1% of the enjoyment.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. That's why it's the greatest investment of all time.
Absolutely.
You can put up a small amount, but you get 100% of the
And when he's
fun.
in the pub or a restaurant with his friends, he's saying, my horse won, not my 1% one.
Exactly.
And
That's the best part.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, we do jump around a bit, but two important questions I want to ask you is how long have we got Greg Bortz? How long are you doing this for?
My initial commitment when I sat down with Owen and we discussed things is like, I'd said 5 years. That was probably I think we came in mid-22. So we're about 2.5 to 3 years in. So there's probably about another 2 years to go. Certainly not going to be lost to racing. Love it too much. Hope that we are fortunate enough to be owners for as long as possible and enjoy the great sport. So my objective on a personal level was to, first of all, to leave racing in a better place than I found it. I feel confident that will be the case. The second part, which I am 10 million% confident, because of Hollywoodbets' involvement, racing is in great hands. And the team at Hollywoodbets will ensure that we keep moving forward, and that part's brilliant. So my real focus over the next 2 and 2.5 years is going to be to continue to identify talent, motivate talent, mentor talent, and I'm seeing it in the Cape, and I'm looking so forward to seeing it here in KZN. A lot of times you actually have great people, just haven't quite either been mentored or reached their full potential, and I'm certain we're going to find many talented individuals that we're going to see step up here in KZN. We're seeing that in the Cape, and look forward to when we leave, having all these people be at a level that they've just got it. So that's your answer to the question. I would say another 2.5 years.
And that leads me to the next question, which was your team. How do you motivate them? What do you do as such a great leader that motivates your team?
What happens is when you have great people around you, the group self-selects. If somebody doesn't share the same level of passion or motivation within themselves, the team weeds them out.
Okay.
They're not comfortable to stay. So as soon as you get that core nucleus around you of people that are motivated and incentivized, everybody rises to that level. I mean, and that's one of the many secrets behind Hollywoodbets. But I'd say that's their main secret, which is you can't be a passenger that doesn't contribute.
Well, that sounds like the Bortz plan when you're in UK. I mean, in
the US.
US.
Oh yeah, I mean you've got to. It's all about the people. To me, I've always said that culture trumps strategy all day long from a business perspective. Like you've got to get the culture out more than, you can have the best strategy, but the worst culture, you guarantee to fail.
Happen, yeah.
If you've got great culture and a bad strategy, you'll figure out a way to correct your strategy, So I think passion is important. So I like to, when I walk, I like to have a high energy level and hope that rubs off on people around. You happen to know Basil Thomas. Basil, long time with the consultant too, and very involved with Hollywoodbets. But before that, ran Clairwood, as you know. And you just lead by example. Basil would walk around, and if there was a cigarette butt on the floor, Basil would pick it up. And when Basil picked that up, people noticed that the head is doing that stuff, and it's like, well, I better make sure that I do that. And so I think that's a key part of the leadership style.
Well, that story about Basil when he was at Clairwood, he had to come on course with a tie and a jacket, and
Absolutely.
he made it obviously clear. And then we always used to put a Durban Turf Club tyre on just to annoy him.
No, but I think that's the key. That's the key answer to the question. Is you've got to lead by example. You can't sit in an ivory tower and bark out instructions and expect that a culture gets created and people do what you say. So that to me is the key. You've got to walk the walk yourself.
Gosh. The social media world, we all know about that, and it's great for marketing. It has its place. Some don't enjoy it, some do. But you were at one stage very active on social media. Seems to be no more.
Yeah, it's literally more a function of time. I mean, I have the worst OCD. So if somebody makes
two of us.
Yeah, but like mine's, if somebody, so when I do my emails, if I haven't responded or resolved an email, it sits in my inbox and it drives me absolutely mad that I'm not down to 0 emails. I need to get them all out my inbox. And the same on social media, I get 1 million comments. And while Gina would say to me, stop responding to everybody, I was like, I've got to respond. It's rude not to, I've got to deal with them.
Yeah.
It was so time consuming. And oftentimes, no disrespect, but some of the comments were not well thought out. You know, and I then felt the obligation to set them on the right path
straight
and so it's like I actually was up at 4 in the morning, come home from a long day and just working on all the social media, and then Gina was like, you got to tap out, and that's what I did. So I've tapped out. So I have no idea what goes on in social media. Every now and then, if there's some incident or something, somebody will take a screenshot and WhatsApp to me, did you see this? But that's if there's something sort of major that's being brought to my attention. Absent that, I'm away from it, and it's incredibly cathartic. I do go on X, but I go on X, that's how I get my news. I'm talking about world events and what have you. So I do get horse racing feeds, but from globally there. But I'm not on Facebook or Instagram. I'm sure I have 20 million messages sitting in the inbox and people thinking, how rude is this gentleman for not responding? But I wouldn't know that.
Well, it's a thing. It's just time is shortage of time is certainly real, and that makes sense as to why you would have tapped out from social media. I mean, it certainly does make sense. I know you haven't got OCD. Greg mentions OCD. We're a special kind of special, but nevertheless, you talk about your inbox. It drives me batty. I will not switch the side light off and go to sleep if there is one WhatsApp in my chat that hasn't. If the thing at the bottom. Why don't you
read mine then?
You're on the other phone. No, you always get responded to. Maybe at 12 o'clock at night. But if the bottom says 37 chats, I have to have 0 chats before I go. OCD is a terrible thing, which you don't know anything about. But nevertheless, now I also want to chat about the open bet, because a lot of the people out there say, ban the open bet, get rid of the open bet. How's your feeling on all that?
Move on. This has gone all the way to the highest court in the land. It is absolutely legal. So what you're going on about ban, this is settled law. So I think that's silly. I think when you say people are saying that, I think the thinking is, in the old days, when the tote was the only form of betting, that is how racing operators made money, and that's how racing operators funded horse racing. Since the open bet has come about, the racing operators are no longer making money. The money's being made elsewhere, and as a result, racing has fallen on its face. Therefore, we would reverse it if you reverse the open bet. I think that's a false statement for 2 reasons. Well, one main reason, which is the tote itself as a product is challenged. At the time when there was an open bet, the tote was really where everybody bet on everything. With the advent of fixed odds, more people would rather know that you've backed a horse at 10 to 1, you're getting 10 Rand for your Rand. Some don't want to wait to see how much it paid afterwards based on the winning ticket. So the tote has become a more challenged product. So that's one reason. Stopping the open bet won't change that. Of course, I know most people would say the open bet relates to pick sixes and jackpots and what have you, but that's the one reason. The second point why I don't believe that is, at the end of the day, what it's about is the racing operator wants to make money, right? Its primary form of income was from the tote. That's obviously fallen, for 2 reasons: the tote falling in popularity, and B, the open bet taking a lot of that tote business, right? So my thinking came in, well, okay, how are we going to get that money in? And to me, I had a conversation with the biggest and I think best bookmaker in the country, and Hollywoodbets have just stepped into that fold. So these losses, which are being made at Gold Circle and in the Cape and elsewhere, Hollywoodbets is funding these losses. So if you were to then stop the open bet, okay, great. Are we going to make more money than we do now with the support of Hollywoodbets? I'm saying it's either way. The purpose of that statement is return money to racing. I can tell you that money is being returned to racing. Yeah. So I mean, it's moot. It's already It's, I mean, and I'm not talking about advertising. It's one thing to have, for example, the Hollywoodbets Durban July. You're right. That's sponsorship. Your brand gets boosted. But when you are also writing checks to fund losses, which cover salaries and things that don't carry any branding, you're putting money back into racing. So on a personal perspective, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here advocating that when I have Hollywoodbets sitting here doing exactly that and more. So that's not an area worthy of time or effort. I think we'd much rather focus on fixing the racing product and all other sources of revenue.
The partnership. Now let's explain to the viewers. As I said, there's Greg Bortz, Hollywoodbets, which is Owen Heffer. So Greg Bortz and Greg Bortz and Hollywood. The differences between Cape Town and KZN, the business, the contribution, is it equal? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, no, most certainly not equal. Let's talk about the Cape. We came into the Cape together with Hollywoodbets being 80% and myself being 20% is how it came about. When it came to that was the initial focus. There was no intent to come into KZN, but when sort of KZN or Gold Circle was falling on hard times, Owen said right away, there is no way that we will not be involved in saving racing in KZN. The financial contribution, everything that's taking place in KZN is 100% coming from Hollywoodbets. And I mean, Hollywoodbets, same in the Cape. I mean, Hollywoodbets on a go-forward basis are the funders of any losses, everything that's going on. So, often I get very embarrassed. I feel I get disproportionate because I'm the chairman and I'm,
sort of face of the business.
Yeah, face of the business. I feel I get way too much credit. Literally, I will give all the credit to Hollywoodbets, and just know that everything we're here talking about, what's going on in KZN, you should know that every single penny that's being spent here, whether it's funding losses, or I'm sure we'll talk about the track and the upgrades, everything, 100% of everything is coming from Hollywoodbets.
Well, you brought up tracks. The news broke that there's going to be a polytrack refurbishment, and yeah, that's exciting. That's needed too.
Yeah, the polytrack's absolutely needed. You've heard a lot about the condition of the polytrack. So we've made that a priority. You asked at the beginning about when's the deal closing.
Yes.
And I said to you, hopefully sometime in 2025, right? I expect it to be in 2025.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. That's the faith and the goodwill.
But yes, but in credit to Owen and Hollywoodbets, they're like, we can't wait for that. We have to go on faith that it will happen, but that polytrack's in bad shape.
Yeah.
So even though the deal's not yet approved, that process is beginning. Now, in terms of that process, just so you know, it's a complicated process. It's not so simple as in, okay, just replace it. Replace it with what? What's the right surface at the moment? That polytrack is what, 20 years old or whatever it is, What's the right surface? What are they racing with in Southall versus what they're racing with in Happy Valley versus what they're racing with in, you know, wherever in the US. What's the weather conditions? What are the soil conditions? What's the humidity levels? What's the rainfall? What about our situation here? Could you go back to where you were? There are so many variables, and it's taken time to do the investigation. The investigation's been done thoroughly. We have a plan. There will be a new surface coming in. It will be an all-weather type surface. It's above my pay grade to go into the tapeter, poly, different things, tapeter type surface. But a lot of work has been done by a whole lot of experts that have been here, and that process is starting. The difficult part, of course, is what happens to racing when you put it in, because it's disruptive.
Sure.
If you think about the work that goes in, so we've now got to work on our programming, our fixtures. What are we going to do? We're going to take some time off while we do it. Are we going to maybe shut down for a week or two while we get the heavy lifting done? And these are things that Justin and the racing team are looking at. But yes,
good.
there will
We're going to
be
have more racing at Scottsville.
You're the mayor of Scottsville.
Well, there will need to
It's
be.
the best race course in the country.
Love it. No, wonderful race. Wonderful race.
Said as the proud Maritzburg chairman, as a Maritzburg mayor. You talk about the credit. You're not a boastful person, but what has been your proudest? What have you stood back or sat back at Hollywoodbets Kenilworth and looked at something and said, wow, I'm proud of that, I'm chuffed with that. What's been your proudest achievement? Knowing that you're not a boastful person.
Probably my proudest achievement was my father was down here recently lives in Los Angeles. My dad's 83, hadn't been here for a while, and thus I'd been to America to see him, but he hadn't been here. And he had heard, your son is doing amazing things in the Cape. He'd heard it. My dad has a lifelong friend whose name is Leon Elman. Leon was part of the guys that set up a game supermarket here. You remember Game?
Game, yes.
Yeah. And Leon left a long time ago to go live in Miami. And Leon came in for 10% of Oriental Charm amongst a few other horses. Actually, I think he has 10% of Magic Verse too. So we have two runners in the World Sports Betting met together. And Leon, my dad's had no interest in horse racing whatsoever. The closest he ever got to racing is when he sliced his 5-iron on this hole here in the middle. Shocking golfer, and he used to play here at Royal Durban in the middle. And he said, you really should see it's amazing what, Greg and the team have done. So when he came down recently, he came down now, and he came to LKP. That was his first horse race that he's ever been to.
Magnificent picture I saw.
While he didn't know the before and after, I think so many people going up to my dad saying, your son has done an amazing job. Like that was, I would say that has been the highlight of what's happened. And I remember sending a photo of it to a few people. I actually sent a picture to Basil, and he was also very emotional for me, just knowing what that journey's been like. But that really is, it's hard to explain what it is we found, what it is that I found when I walked in, what I observed with my own eyes in mid-2022, from the ceilings falling in. You've heard about the escalators not working, what have you. But the culture within the building was somewhere between toxic and depressed. And now, if you walk through, it's magnificent. You're going to see it for yourself when you're there. The building is magnificent, and there are very few, if any, race courses that I think now rival Hollywoodbets Kenilworth. You'll see it, you'll be blown away. However, what you'll see more than anything is the happiness. Like, I walk through that building, I'm telling you, everybody is passionate, whether it's the guys on the tractors driving past my office, waving and what have you. It is brilliant. Like, I love walking the halls of that building and walking around. From the guys that are dealing with the parking as you walk in, to in the finance department, in all the departments, there is an energy level and a passion there for what it is we're producing. And when I compare it to what it was, I get to feel that pride, and I mean this sincerely. I feel that pride every single day that I go into work.
Sure.
I do, and I'm looking so forward to experiencing that here in Durban, and I know it's going to happen. Like, I know what's coming.
Yeah.
We are going to Before coming here, we're having this podcast is being filmed here at Hollywoodbets Greyville. I walked into one of the offices, and I walked in and I just said hi to maybe 10 or 11 different people, and like I can see they're eager to get going. I mean, you gave quotes about change at the beginning. They know change is coming. Change always makes people scared because you don't know what is coming, but in this particular case, they've seen the playbook and the roadmap, what happened in the Cape, and they've seen that it's been an upliftment in every respect.
Yeah.
And I think there is an excitement there. I think for everybody.
Yeah, well, suddenly it's not doom and gloom anymore. Which
absolutely.
Every time we went to a management meeting, it was, we're not doing so well there.
Yeah.
Is Dad still in the country?
He is.
Is he coming to the Met, the World Sports Betting Met?
No, he would have left by then.
Shame. Okay.
Yeah. But when I head back today, we'll be seeing him tomorrow. But that was truly my. That was truly.
I hope you're looking after the press down there, because the last time I was at the Met,
which was in 1973, so be careful.
We were stuffed into a little room and thinking with no air conditioning. The bloody place was falling apart.
But that was
a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
No, it wasn't when you were there. Before your time. But
there were no air conditioners there. Now I would say to you, bring a sweater.
Oh, okay.
The AC's pumping, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Greg, I know that you're under pressure for time, and we could sit for 5 hours, but we unfortunately can't. But there's a few things that I want to rattle through quickly in the home stretch, in the closing stages of the podcast.
Yeah.
The one is the summer sale, Cape sales, and I just want the team, as they always do, just to zoom in on that for our viewers, to give it the maximum exposure that it deserves. Thank you. And the summer sale, but Cape sales, Cape racing sales, this particular catalogue, having gone through it, is outstanding. There's more to come.
Yeah. We have a lineup now, and I mean, credit to Justin and team for putting this together. So we've changed it, as you know. We used to have a premier yearling sale in January. Now we always look around and see what's working in the world, and we saw the Goffs sale at Kensington, which takes place the week of Royal Ascot, which is a smaller select sale. Well, now we've implemented that on the Thursday before World Sports Betting Met.
And I was just looking through the catalogue.
And it's a
pedigrees in there.
Yeah. It's a power catalogue, small by design, a short sale, but a high-powered sale just before the World Sports Betting Met. And then our Premier Yearling sale is now going to be in March, and will be over 2 days. And wow, that's a power catalogue too. So I think you're going to see our sales company go from strength to strength. We obviously have wonderful breeders in this country. We truly do. Geographically, the bulk of them happen to be based in the Western Cape. That's just where that's just where it is. So I think the region's been crying out for a stronger sales company, which I feel like that's where we've gotten to. And I think everybody knows that 100% of the profits, not 99, but 100% of the profits stay in racing, go into the stakes and everything that goes on. So it's not a so I think there's been strong buy-in. There's been buy-in from the breeders now. There's buy-in from the buyers and everybody. So I think the catalogue is amazing. The March catalogue will blow your mind even more. So
I saw JP van der Merwe had a Winx hat on.
Yes, how did the relationship with, obviously the Hollywoodbets Durban July, but I mean in general, how did that relationship come up, and with Winx? And let's talk about Winx.
Yeah, so Winx is a newly formed business that is owned by Francesca Snaith, who is Jonathan Snaith's wife, and Gina. They set up that business together. Francesca has a long history in insurance. She's worked in insurance her entire career. Her family has an insurance brokerage. And they provided, Francesca worked on providing short-term insurance. Obviously, Gina has a strong horse background, and the idea of what if they set up a business to enter into the horse insurance market is how it came about, and that has evolved. They've grown just tremendously in a very short space of time, and are not just providing now just horse insurance. They're also providing short-term insurance. A lot of the horse customers, I said, well, what else can you provide for me? And so that they're growing great. Set that aside. We obviously, Gina and myself, obviously decided to bring on JP van der Merwe as our stable jockey, as our retained jockey.
Yeah, that's why I wondered. I mean, because he had saw one of the Sporting Post.
Oh, what an ambassador! What a wonderful ambassador!
What does he know about Winks in Australia?
Yeah. Well, that's where obviously the name came from. You know, Winks, an absolutely world-class champion filly. I'm not going to make that comment about Francesca and Gina, but obviously world-class two ladies setting up a business. The name was short, it was punchy, had a horse racing connection, a female connection. It seemed to be absolutely, loved the name, and obviously JP being our retained jockey, Winks decided to sponsor JP, help get their brand up. JP is now affectionately known as Winks van der Merwe, and by the way, just if we can, not that you were asking, but just a shout out to JP. You know, certainly on a personal level, obviously a lot of this preceded Gina. The two main catalysts for my form as an owner changing. The first one was meeting Gina and her not allowing me to ever pick horses, because what the hell do I know? She's spot on. She's done an amazing job. I mean, I look at a family photo, I can't recognize who my kids are, let alone know what each one of my horses looks like. Gina, no matter how many horses we have, she'll look at some video clip, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. She is remarkable, so she's been absolutely crucial to the form turning. And the second factor is Winks van der Merwe himself. Having a retained jockey, he gets to ride all your horses and gets to give you feedback, this, that, and the other. We've always been blessed with having wonderful trainers. Obviously, we have a lot of horses with Snace who are just top class, and you know, Brett, and you know, we can go on in terms of our trainers. But the change has been JP, having that consistency and getting that feedback. It has been absolutely brilliant. We did not expect that in his first season of working together, we would win the Hollywoodbets Durban in July. But we did, and we put a lot of that down to JP. He is just, him and Abby are just such brilliant additions to Gina and my life, and they're just great, and long may the partnership continue.
Absolutely. So Winks, that's certainly a company of high quality, so well named. Then just Hollywoodbets Scottsville, there is obviously going to be something at Andrew Racing. He's the mayor of Harrodsburg. Obviously, as structural changes take place here at Hollywoodbets Greyville, I presume some would take it to Hollywoodbets Scottsville. Yeah,
but if you look at, the answer undoubtedly will be yes. But if you look at Hollywoodbets Kenilworth and look at Hollywoodbets Durbanville, right? We haven't replicated at Hollywoodbets Durbanville. We've replicated at Hollywoodbets Kenilworth. There's not unlimited resources, right? This is number one. Number two, you do have the mothership where you race the most, so that's where you start off on, and then the other factor, of course, here, which is a little more nuanced, is that both racetracks are leased here, they're not owned, whereas in Cape Town the racetracks are owned. And if you think about it, if you own your house or you rent your house, you know, the level of, you know, renovations are perhaps different. So there are many factors at play, but I can tell you this about Hollywoodbets. Hollywoodbets as a company, they don't like to be associated with anything that doesn't put their branding.
All Scottsville need is a coat of paint and a decent menu and some jacked up waiters. So that's all it needs.
Well, in terms of, if you talk about catering and food and beverage, those are all areas. Everything is about quality upliftment across the company, no matter whether it be at Hollywoodbets Greyville or Hollywoodbets Scottsville. Obviously, as I said, we are not in the company until such time as the transaction gets approved. And if there are any urgent matters that require, whether that be a coat of paint or leaking roof, I can assure you that Hollywoodbets will make sure that everything is done, you know.
On to our quick fires, and we're now in the final 100 meters, and just some fun questions. We always like to, because our podcast, as you know, is very, of course, lovely, informative, but also nice and relaxed. So I'd like to end off with just a few fun questions. And the first one is, what is the weirdest gift that anyone's ever given you?
Weirdest gift?
Or a gift that you thought, goodness me, what is this? Or what am I going to do with this?
You know what? It's not going to be an answer there's not going to get many likes in terms of the answers. Like, none that I can ever think of, because it's the weirdest thing with me as a kid. From a very young age, I've hated my birthday. Right? A lot of people, when you get older, you say, I don't want to have birthdays. I've hated it from a kid. I've always been a gift giver. I haven't been much of a gift receiver. So I've always turned people away from it. Don't give me anything. So unfortunately, I don't have any pithy answer to your fun question. I don't mean to ruin the moment.
Not at all. That's what it is. And that's a darn good answer. You rather give gifts than receive gifts.
I tell you, the best gift I've ever gotten was the trophy handed to us when we won the Hollywoodbets Durban.
There we go.
There's your answer.
Greg, if you were forced to eat one food daily for the rest of your life?
Oh, I'll do it anyway. Sushi.
Sushi, okay.
That's an easy one.
Okay. Silliest reason that you've ever missed an appointment?
I've never missed an appointment. Like that, everybody knows with me, right? Like, on time is late.
Yeah, time is late, yeah.
You know, late is unacceptable, never happen. So I'm always early for everything. I'm at the airport 3 hours before a domestic flight.
So that's also a little bit of OCD as well, which we can absolutely, but that's good. I mean, that certainly is good.
Yeah, and thankfully Gina is very similar, so that works out well.
If you had to write an autobiography, what would the title be?
I can't believe you bought this book. No, probably keep it simple. Like, the stuff that we do and the stuff we talk about is really not complicated. It really isn't rocket science. It's just treat people right as you would want to be treated. Treat people with respect. Do the simple things. Don't overcomplicate it. Honestly, that's sort of the mantra in life and the mantra in business. So probably just keep it simple.
Martin Locke's released his autobiography. He's named it Unlocked, which I thought was very clever. So
there's not much I can do with Bortz. Yeah. You know, Bortz and sold. You know, I don't know.
I hope we don't get mentioned in Unlocked.
Well, we never know. We're going to have to receive that copy from Graham Hawkins when we're down in the Cape. If you could have a conversation with a historical person, who would that be?
Winston Churchill.
Yep.
Winston Churchill. Talk about having your back up against the wall and somehow finding a way, you know, of inspiring a nation to overcome the most, insurmountable odds. I mean, I've read all these biographies on.
You read the William Manchester trilogy on Churchill?
No, I've got that one doesn't come. I've got 3 different ones that I've read that
I'll bring you the 3. They're all about this thick. But
oh, sure, I've got plenty of time, man. Bring me that.
But you said you're a good reader.
I am
a big
man's
reader.
Going to sleep sometime. Then the last question: if you could instantly master a language, what language would it be?
That one's easy. English. Being able to speak well and write well is just critical. I'm quite harsh on myself in terms of my skill level. I find it's the hardest language. Feel like I'm learning all the time. I'm terrible with languages. I'm great with numbers. Okay. So I try to learn Spanish. I owned a home in Mexico, and I used to wind up, my staff would speak to me in Spanglish as opposed to me speaking in Spanish. I'm useless with languages. So the answer would be, I think there's nothing more powerful than being a skilled orator and a skilled writer. I wish I were both. I am neither. I try all the time to get better. The answer would definitely be English.
Okay, interesting. Greg, that's the wrap, unfortunately. But before we close, I just want to tell everybody that, of course, we're racing at Hollywoodbets Scottsville here in KwaZulu-Natal on Sunday the 19th. As you heard from Andrew, there's a book full of betting opportunities. Of course, we're at Hollywoodbets Kenilworth on Saturday. So lots of racing action coming at you over the weekend. So don't forget to get your bets on and to bet into the wonderful racing opportunities that await you. And just to wish Greg and thank you, Andrew, for your time. I know that road from Maritzburg is not pleasant, but lovely to have you with us. And Greg, thanks. Yeah, thank you for everything, and just lovely to spend time with you and to touch base again.
Thank you. No, I greatly appreciate it. It's been a while since we did the original one. When we did the original one, actually, I know it's time to wrap up. We did the original one. It was at my hotel just before the Hollywoodbets Durban July of 2022, when I was nervous. We had Pump and Power was actually a weak favorite, but nonetheless favorite for that race back then. And that didn't work out so well. It's kind of great we're having the discussion now, and you get to ask about Oriental Charm. It's funny how it's been a hell of a couple of years. So
absolutely
great bookend to that.
Yeah. No, fantastic. Thank you, and it's just been wonderful.
Thank
and
you,
to thank you again, as I did at the one sale we were at, because Greg put us in the spotlights. We won that Equus Award, which was really wonderful. So thanks very much. Now, I'm not going to end the way I normally end, because we're always going to see you in the winner's box, please God. But there's just two things that I want to repeat, that I want to share with you in ending, that I think we need to take home and really think seriously about. The words of Greg Bortz: we don't allow failure to be an option. That speaks volumes. We don't allow failure to be an option. Think of that. And then I'd like to end with: stop being afraid of what could go wrong, and start getting excited about what could go right.